But so we're going to be talking about Fargo Season 3 for my first topic of this podcast. I've reviewed the first 2 seasons on this podcast. I don't know if they're available on YouTube. I'm pretty sure they're not. I think they're just only in audio format on the audio platform, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and Google Podcasts. If you're unfamiliar with my show, if you want to check it out, I highly recommend you do. But if you're unfamiliar with Fargo as a series, it's pretty much sort of like the Fargo film. If you've never seen the Fargo film, it's just some dumbass people make some dumbass decisions and do some dumbass things, which result in some dumbass consequences. And it's absolutely brilliant to watch. It's such a great time. It's amazing. I'm not really going to spoil anything about the story of season 3. It's not related at all to the first 2 seasons, even though there's some Easter eggs here and there. But unlike the first 2 that are uniquely tied together because, of a certain character, being sort of the father of the main character of the first episode of the first season, and his story being told in the second season. This season's kind of unrelated, which is kind of nice. If you again aren't familiar with the Fargo series, each season is a different story with different characters, with different actors. So it's kind of like an American Horror Story or a True Detective or something like that. So in this season is very different from the first 2, not only in the characters and the actors, but tonally as well. Like the first 2 seasons, like the first season, for example, was very much like the Fargo film, which I think is important from a Fargo show standpoint, but it felt a lot like the Coen brothers' original film Fargo. The story, the characters, the feel to it. And then the second season of the show kind of had this weird Tarantino feel to it. There was constant split screen type of filmmaking. It was a very different style. It felt a lot more, the constant like drumline theme, like being blasted throughout the season. I don't know, the music was a lot more unique and more like sort of like in your face, like a Quentin Tarantino film is. And this third season, it had a very different feel. It almost felt like a Fincher feel, at least visually, of a lot more monochromatic, a lot like more black and white type of visual style. If you've seen Fincher films like The Social Network or Gone Girl or whatever, you kind of know what I'm talking about. House of Cards, a little bit like a clean, slick type of camera work. The darks are very dark, the lights are very light type of visual style. It also had elements of this David Lynch weirdness to it. If you've never seen anything from David Lynch, he's a very weird, unique type of director that's very unique. And kind of spoiler, he's the man behind of what I was going to talk about in my Why I Love episode, a little bit of a spoiler for that, but sort of these weird, fantastical, almost theological, or whatever you want to call it, elements that like are kind of unexplainable or a little bit more ambiguous. And that's kind of the main thing that is so different about this season, is that in my opinion, this season is a lot more symbolic or metaphorical and a little bit more up to interpretation than the first 2. The first 2 are very kind of set in stone type of stories. They have certain themes and like life lessons in there for sure, like don't be a dumbass. But it's very kind of like set in stone. This is what happens. And this season, it does that, like, oh, this is a true story, this is what actually happened, but there's a lot more ambiguity to it, which I kind of really liked. Like, for example, our main character in this story, she is a detective, not a detective, she was a chief of some borough in Minnesota, and now her borough kind of got absorbed by a bigger one, and, she has this adversity to technology, in her, like, precinct, where she was, like she didn't have any computers. Like they didn't use any computers because everything was just physically filed and everything had a file. There was no electrical files or, documents in her office. And like another chief is like, what? Why wouldn't you automate all that stuff? And then you find out that automatic doors don't open for her when she puts her hand under like an automatic soap dispenser. Soap doesn't come out and she can't wash her hands because she's like, motioning underneath a sink that's automated, and like it's like she's not even there. And then also running parallel to her story is this other story that she reads about that her stepfather wrote in his past about this like immortal robot like traveling through time and space, going around different civilizations and always repeating the same words, I can help, I can help. And that's kind of her story as well, because in that story, like no one really acknowledges the robot and never really actually lets the robot help, even though he's saying, I can help. And in her story, she's trying to unravel this crazy ass case and almost conspiracy that she's trying to unravel. And all these people around her are just like, no, that's ridiculous. That doesn't happen that way. This is what happened. Not what you're saying. This is what happened. And we as an audience know that like, oh no, she is right. So it's like these two parallel stories and like kind of relating to each other symbolically is a very cool technique that I really like. And also just kind of going a little bit off track, the main villain of this season, the VM Varga, played by the guy who plays Professor Lupin in Harry Potter. I think probably other than Lorne Malvo from the first season, Billy Bob Thornton's Lorne Malvo from the first season, probably VM Varga is probably the best character in the whole series. He steals every scene that he's in. He's so good. Creepy, menacing, scary, gross, revolting type of guy, but like you also kind of understand his worldviews and philosophies, and he's like has these own unique quirks, and like certain things like his teeth are like rotted and disgusting because like he doesn't believe in wasting anything. So like when he eats like a ton of food and then he just like regurgitates it and stuff like that. So like it's from him throwing up consistently that his teeth are rotting. It's gross, and there's probably there's symbolism behind it too, how he's kind of like almost, I don't know, like some type of wolf going around, taking over these legit companies and turning them into these like these like money laundering things. And behind his character is very symbolic. That's the main thing behind it. And his outlook on life is very comparable to what his role is in the show, which I really thought was really cool. And again, also the relevance of just these other weird events that aren't really explained to you, like weird, kind of a spoiler, but like at certain like on a certain point of the season, it's almost like God himself shows up, and certain actor they got to play this character I thought was perfect. It also kind of adds to that David Lynch comparison a little bit, so I thought that was really cool. But I mean, the big thing that I really enjoyed and kind of set this season apart for me from the other previous two seasons is that, going back to our main character, every other character surrounding our main character is always letting her know, like, this is how things are. What you think happened here is not correct. This is what happened. Let me tell you what actually happened, because this is what we understand and what we know. We don't think happened, we know happened, even though there's really no evidence that actually points to that. It's just certain experiences, life experiences have told that this is what happened. And at the beginning of every single episode, if you're familiar with the show, this, text comes up, this is a true story, this is based off of a true story, this actually happened, to protect the character, the people involved, their names were changed and all of that. And we know as an audience, like, that's not true. It's just to add to, I don't know, the element of the story, just to add some, I don't know, suspense to it, even though this is not an actual true story. Maybe certain things are, but definitely this didn't happen. So that's kind of interesting. In the very opening scene of the season, it's actually really easy to forget it happened as you watch along the season, that this opening scene happened. But in the opening scene of the series, the first thing you see is some random dude. I think they're speaking German or Russian or something. I forget exactly what they are, but he sat down in front of this military guy, and it's almost like he's in prison or something. And this military guy is telling him, "You are this person. This is who you are." And the other guy is like, "No, I'm not that person. I've never met that person. I've never heard of that person. I'm this person." And the military guy is insisting, "No, you're not that person. You're this person." And I thought that was kind of interesting. So it's the whole season is other characters telling our main character and telling us, this is what happens. This is how life goes. This is what happens. And then this is how things are going to play out. And then we get this sort of ambiguous ending. And throughout the season, there's things that aren't really explained to us that are just kind of up to your interpretation. I thought that duality there was really cool and very relevant to the story. It's not like, sort of black and white, type of, it's not, no story in Fargo is by the numbers, but it's not like a set in stone story. This is what happens. This is what happened. Like in this season, it kind of takes a different, more contemplative, subjective approach to it. Like you kind of have to put things together, and it's like, well, this is what happened, but like nothing's really explained to you. So it's like, well, what do you think? Like the ending of the season, I thought was like, oh, okay, you've given us an ambiguous ending, and like it's like, oh, was that a good ending or was that a bad ending? That's kind of up to you, and it's not really told. Like even the characters themselves, I think, don't even really know at the very end, which I thought was really cool. You can take that however you wish, but the way I took it, which I thought was kind of awesome, is that, don't go out there and settle for what other people tell you what life is and should be. Philosophers and theologians have just, have contemplated their entire lives about the age-old question of what the meaning of life is. And the beauty of that question is it's whatever your answer is. It's whatever you make it out to be. And that's what our main character really kind of discovers through her journey through the season is, what, fuck these people, telling me what actually happened. They don't know. I know what actually happened. People tell you how to live your life, and fuck them. I know how to live my life. I'll live my life the way I want to live it. I thought that was really cool, and that's something that, you can take away from a season of television like this that you can't really take away from the first two seasons. But I will say, I never really expected that out of a Fargo season, because of its predecessors. But because of its predecessors, it kind of throws you off a little bit, with this season, because usually more deep inward thinking type of entertainment, it definitely starts out a little slow and kind of hard to get into, and that's what I kind of experienced watching this season. So yeah, the first two seasons might be a little bit more entertaining than this one, but I think this one, it's kind of slow. You kind of have to stick with it. Like this was kind of my second watching the season fully. Was my second time trying to get into the season. Like I watched the first season a long time ago, I think last year, and then I just kind of stopped for some reason. Maybe I'll watch something else, but I didn't watch the rest of the season. So I came back and rewatched it, and then I watched the full season and got the full experience and the full story, and I thought that was really cool. And a lot of stories that are have ambiguous endings and are a little bit more contemplative have these, rough starts that you kind of need to like stick with, like a 2001 that's a slow film. Blade Runners is considered slow paced. So, yeah, certain things, but I mean, like, if you stick with it, it's worth it. It's worth your time. And that's kind of how I feel about this season. Like, at first, I was going in kind of like, it was kind of being like my least favorite of the three seasons that I've seen of Fargo. But over time, as I kept watching, I kept thinking about it, and it kind of became one of my favorite seasons, if not my favorite season. And just because of the meaning behind it and the beauty of, our character being told how things happen and then giving us this unexplainable, ambiguous ending that's like, oh, you didn't actually give us a definitive ending. It's like up to us to interpret the dialogue and what we're being shown here. I thought there was a beauty to it. I really liked that. So if you like stories like that, if you like certain things that kind of make you think and some things that you can actually kind of take away from, certain ideas you can take away from entertainment, and entertainment being a little bit more than just pure entertainment, I think definitely check out season 3 of Fargo. I think it's definitely worth your time. Hello there. I hope you enjoyed that video. If you're unfamiliar with this channel, this is Nerd Out Sanctuary. I'm your host, Michael. What do I talk about, you say? Well, I talk about anything nerdy. So that's movies, video games, TV shows, comic books every once in a while. Books, maybe not, I don't know. Anything that I feel like talking about. I'm a huge nerd. I hope you're a huge nerd, and I hope we can enjoy our nerdiness together here. This is a full audio podcast available on iTunes, Spotify, Google Podcasts, the major podcast platforms. So consider going over to those and checking out the full version of the episode. And other past episodes, please leave me a review and subscribe on those platforms. If you don't want to do that, clipped, shorter versions of those full episodes will be posted here on YouTube. So consider subscribing and liking the videos for more to support me and future content that I will be producing in the future on nerdy stuff. So yeah, thank you, and see you on the next one.